Hi, and welcome to A Very Human Future. And the question I want to pose to you is, are we ready to open the door to a very human future? But perhaps the first question should be, what is a very human future? Well, if we think about the way that technology is progressing, if we think about the potential capability of technology to take over most of the manual things we would do in the workplace, maybe even during our leisure time, then perhaps we have a choice to make. And perhaps that choice is about looking at the issues that we need to resolve, looking at the opportunities we need to consider in how we use technology to enhance humanity, not at the cost of humanity. So here are 12 domains that I think are really important for us to consider. The first is developing leadership, and particularly around developing leadership skills that help us stay human. Things like how we learn, things like how we develop lifelong curiosity, how we become more self-aware about the impact that we have on others in an increasingly digitized world. But also using foresight, making sure that we can understand the nature and become tolerant of uncertainty and complexity. So think about scenario thinking, looking at a full systems perspective, not only the system in terms of the current day, but also systems in terms of the future. So those are some of the things that I think are really important when we look at developing leadership skills, helping to build mindsets and capability to imagine a very different future. The second domain is about digital literacy. That's not about learning to code. It's about learning to ask the right questions. What are the technologies that we're seeing that could have a radically different impact on the way that our future evolves? How do we need to understand about the implications of these technologies? How do we understand about the way that they work, about the way that they potentially impact our lives? How do they affect our businesses? How do they impact the way our customers and our clients interact with our businesses? If we understand a little bit more about digitization, we can ask the right questions. Digital literacy. The third domain is about education and training systems. So some people say that at the moment, kids currently entering primary school, 2/3 of them will work in jobs that don't exist right now. But it's not just a question of education in primary, secondary, and college and university. It's also about the way we think about training and retraining. So what if by the time that kids currently going through school, when they leave school, they have to consider up to 6 different career choices across their lifetime? They have to embrace the notion of digitization and how that's changing work and jobs. So training systems as well as education need to be radically different in the future. Quite typically, big organizations are really bad at evaluating exponentials, about thinking about the potential of real radical change. That's the realm of the startup ecosystem. That's the realm of the really creative, innovative people that look at some of these new technologies and create new business ideas. So being able to evaluate exponential change, exponential technologies, really get under the skin about how they might change what we do. And this isn't just about being right all the time. It's about exploring and failing well and bringing those lessons into our future practice. The next one is about rethinking work and employer responsibilities. And for me, there are 2 dimensions here. One is, and we've already touched on it, how work and the world of jobs is changing. What does it mean to have a job? What does it mean to work? What kind of work will we be undertaking? Will there only be 50% of jobs available in the future? Or is it that 3/4 of the content of 2/3 of the jobs we have right now will change very radically? So that requires us to rethink the world of work. But equally, the more we can monitor and check on employees, then there are responsibilities on us as employers to think about how we manage and look after that data, how we use that data to interact with the employee, but also how we think about our employees at the point where automation takes away their jobs. how do we get them ready for a world outside of our organisation? The next one is about supporting job creation in new sectors. So there's a bit of a debate, isn't there, about how many new jobs, new sectors, new technologies will create, and whether that balance is enough to offset the loss of jobs through automation. So it's critically important that as a society, we support job creation in new sectors. We look at new ideas, new business models, new concepts, and really understand the benefit of those and start to prepare the groundwork to ensure that business ideas can actually get off the ground. The next one, which is quite topical at the moment in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, how do we invest in the jobless? What do we mean by that? Well, perhaps it's about exploring ideas around universal basic income, universal basic services, maybe even conditional basic income, just to look at the way that we ensure people have enough money in their pockets in order that they can live, that they can feed, that they can travel, that they can learn, that they can entertain themselves. Because if our world does become increasingly automated, then we still need to make sure that people live fulfilling lives. So the issue here is, how do we invest in that jobless part of the population? And it may be through providing cash, but I suspect it may also be by looking at different services, be they travel, be they utilities, be they access to broadband. So looking at a range of universal basics. Touched on this already, but if we have a whole plethora of new technologies, be they atomically precise manufacturing, nanotechnology, quantum computing, immersive technologies, robotics, drones, new healthcare technologies, whatever they might be, we have to make sure that we set up the right investment environment so that the creation of new sectors picks up some of the shortfall that we might find in the way that jobs continue to be automated. Now, there's an issue here about change as well. And for me, it goes back to the notion that actually we don't resist change, we resist being changed. But one of the potential impacts of that is to really challenge our mental health. And if the world is really going through such exponential change, then addressing mental health issues becomes increasingly important and is likely to require an increasing investment in psychology, in psychiatry, in coaching, in counselling, to make sure that people do have somewhere to go. Related to that, it's actually about changing the mindset about what we mean by health and safety at work, because typically that's about physical health. We need to make sure it includes mental health as well. We also need to think about establishing robust technology ethics, and that's twofold. One, it's about looking at the type of technologies we develop, and just because we can do something with technology, posing the question, should we? And linked to that, it's what are the ethics around the way that we develop these technologies? Is it appropriate for us to bring these technologies to market? But also, there's another aspect here, and that aspect is about how we adapt our leadership for a hybrid organisation. And by a hybrid organisation, I mean an organisation with different actors. So humans, if we think about the technologies available to us in the future, potentially enhanced humans. Then if we think about artificial intelligence and robotics, how we interact at a personal level, if you like, with artificially intelligent robots, with other machines. So what does leadership look like in that mixed being world of work? We also need to make sure that we draw constructively on the past. Now, humanity has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. So we need to make sure that those lessons are learned and are brought into our emerging future. Part of a very human future is focusing on basic humanity. So let's not lose sight of what makes us human by drawing on the lessons from the past. And finally, how do we maintain a very human dialogue? And perhaps it's looking at presentations like this. Perhaps it's thinking about how we get together, even in periods of lockdown like we're enduring during the COVID-19 pandemic. How do we continue to communicate? How do we raise these important questions? Because it's only by collaborating around these issues that we can start to make sense. And perhaps that then helps us edge towards a very human future. If you want to know more about this and the other topics that we cover at Informing Choices, then you can look online at our website, informingchoices.com. You can contact me at steve@informingchoices.com, or you can look for us in YouTube, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.